Final Fantasy XII is objectively the best Final Fantasy game. Okay, maybe not. Final Fantasy XII is the story of two kingdoms and two empires, Dalmasca, Nebradia, Arcadia, and Rosaria respectively. 12 tells its story through unconventional methods for this series, and it's assisted by its narrative during intermissions. To me, it's the height of storytelling and world building for Final Fantasy. What I found interesting during my time in Ivalice was the future of Dalmasca felt like it was more in the hands of Larsa than Ashe. During your journey at critical points, he directs Ashe to declare herself as successor for Dalmasca's throne and align with Arcadia, so that she would save Dalmasca from harm.
Lady Ashe, let us go to Ber Omases. With the blessing of his grace, the Grand Kiltius Anastasis, you may rightly wear your crown and declare the restoration of the kingdom of Dalmasca. As queen, you can call for peace between the Empire and Dalmasca and stop Marquis Ondor.
For peace? How dare you say that? The Empire attacked us, stole all we hold dear, and you would have me save them from war?
Dalmasca would be the battlefield. What if Nethicite were used on Rabanasta? You know my brother would do this.
His motivations seem to consistently focus more on the subjugated Dalmasca than his own empire, Arcadia. He dreams of a future that is equal and the treatment of its people fair. Consistently prioritizing avoiding conflict and not to harm Dalmascan citizens, without Larsa there would be no future for Dalmasca after the game's events. Larsa travels with you on this journey, giving glimpses of how he will grow into a leader that will actually make a change. He's shown wanting the same goals as the party and is often working with you to achieve them. However, during this, you're given a look behind the scenes at the cloak and dagger politics of Arcadia, casting a shadow over what he might actually be able to achieve and influence.
The fools think a child emperor's strings easy to pull from the shadows. But they will find that Lord Larsa is no puppet.
Yes, the senators would be most pleased with a puppet for an emperor. Recall, Drace, how the Senate fears and despises Lord Vane's ability. When they realize the truth, that Lord Larsa is no docile lamb to be shepherded, they will bare their teeth and devour him.
It is only by the end you feel some security for the future of Dalmasca and Arcadia. Despite the war and the fear of invasion of Rosaria into Arcadia, Larsa at one point is willing to offer himself as hostage to earn the party's trust in order to avert catastrophe. His transformation, ambition to do good for the kingdoms that loathe the Empire, and his honest approach to the party are one of the most compelling parts of Final Fantasy XII. The cohesion to Final Fantasy XII's story is strengthened with the use of him entering in and out of the party, and the story accompanying his encounters makes his arc more than what you would typically expect from a side character. Final Fantasy XII showcases its strength in storytelling through Larsa. It's also interesting to see that the soldiers you encounter during your time with Larsa have a passive attitude towards you, placing their trust in his decision to travel with the party that could easily put himself in Arcadia in great harm. These soldiers also look for a better future and help paint a picture of an Arcadia that isn't an oppressive regime. I think one of the interesting parts of the cast of playable characters is that of the main characters, each joins the party in a pair, giving a connection and belonging that's sometimes missed in other titles and avoiding vague purposes for being there. Van's somewhat of an exception to this, and I believe he ends up as one of the most misunderstood characters of the series.
I'm Captain Bosch von Rotzenberg of Dalmasca!
At points during my first playthrough, I was confused as to why he was even there. Particularly confusing was why he was witnessing the same visions as Ashe. Here's what I've come to believe during subsequent playthroughs.
The gods granted their favour to King Wraithful, a sword to cut 3 pieces of magicite from the Suncrist, Dawn, Dusk and Midnight Shard. He would oversee the subjugation of territory spanning from Odalia to Valandia. Here he forged the Galtian Alliance.
Although his lineage ended and the Dawn Shard was returned to his tomb, he passed on the Dusk and Midlight Shards to Dalmasca and Nebradia. In scenes where Ashe interacts with these stones, visions of her partner appear to her.
You would have me destroy the Empire? Is this my duty? Is this what you want? I cannot.
It's revealed at a later point in the game that these visions are actually the Akuria, the gods of Ivalice, attempting to manipulate Ash into doing their bidding.
You are our saint, Tashalia Banagin. You must use the Nephesite. You must be the one to straighten history's weave.
The implication here being that Wraithwall could have also been manipulated without him knowing through visions. Exactly how he came to form the Galtian Alliance and his awareness of the Kuria are left to the player to imagine, the Kuria having withdrawn to their own realm thousands of years prior. I believe this also implies that Van was being manipulated by the Akuria, as he's also able to witness these visions of Rassler. And at the start of the game, while burglarizing the royal palace, he's presented with the dust shard. The Akuria admits so much as to deciding the course of mankind, so the way the stone appears to Van leads me to believe it's no coincidence.
Who are you?
I play the leading man. Who else?
Van is the thread that will run through the stories of each important figure you encounter on your journey. His backstory in some way relates to much of the party, be it Barsh for his brother, Ash for his will to defend the kingdom he lives in, Balthea for his dreams of being a sky pirate, and Larsa. At one point, Van forgives Barsh, saying he knows Barsh wasn't the one who killed his brother.
Really, it's alright. I know it wasn't your fault. I see that now. You didn't kill my brother. It was the Empire. My brother trusted you. And he was right.
At an earlier point, Van expresses his lack of trust in Barsh for his role in Rex's death. Barsh's response to Van will be the motivation for his later change in resolve and forgiveness of Barsh.
Believe in your brother. He was a fine soldier. He fought to the last to protect his homeland. No. Surely he fought to protect his brother.
After making their way through the Still Shine of Miriam, the party receives the Sword of Kings, and a cutscene follows where Ash asks Van if he's able to see the visions of Rassler still. Van replies that he can't see anything at all anymore. This could be because the Akuria have cast him off, seeing him as unnecessary now, or maybe it has to do with Van accepting his brother's death and moving on. Van is able to relate to Ash, as both have lost a partner and are coming to terms with it in their story arcs. There's a moment in Jahara where Van confides in Ash, asking if it gets any easier to deal with over time. This is the point where Van admits that his journey is just an escape from his brother's death, and now he has decided that he's going to carry on and discover what he wants out of life. From here, he's inspired from his conversation with Barsh about Rex.
Van is protective of the party he's found his identity in, not tolerating the discrimination they face in Urid Village. These scenes are implicit in his growth and depth of the character throughout the game. He becomes more than the thief shirking responsibility to kill rats in the sewers. However, how much impact these scenes have on his character may be incognizable to the player due to the timing of being sidetracked by the gameplay in between these scenes. As much as the hunts appear and free exploration becomes more feasible. In some ways, the pacing of gameplay makes his story a bit oblique, but I found myself enjoying his change through the game and subsequent playthroughs. Other characters had growth and stories that were more directly aligned with events, like Ash wanting revenge for her husband but is continually confronted by decisions on what is best for Dalmasca and the responsibility she holds for it. Dalmasca's history being one of peace, refusing the dust shard to cause harm. Continually throughout the game, she's faced with the reality that her actions are far bigger than herself. Balthea, being the son of Cid and the fugitive of Arcadia, finds himself fighting both home and family. His character's history is similarly tragic to Van's. He believes his father lost to insanity and disillusioned with Arcadia for its political movers. He runs from his past, taking a new identity as to add further distance. I feel like Balthea is a great contrast to Van in character, as Van is relatively quick to confront his feelings and embraces the future, while Balthea spent much of his history and most of the game running from his. He's often a selfish character and is quite blunt in his behavior.
Empires parade down city streets while refugees walk barefoot through the snow.
And so I sue for peace, to stop short war and ease their suffering. My father will choose peace.
Will he now? You sound sure of yourself. You can never know another, even your father.
Don't take it the wrong way, Kay?
I feel like it was actually a shame that his character was alive in the sequel, as his sacrifice is diminished, which, while he is still selfless in trying to save everyone, the fact that he kept the name Balthier feels like he went nowhere. Aside from this, Final Fantasy XII successfully delivers a story of 9 playable characters with interesting origins and important futures. None are boringly perfect, with every character comes moments of vulnerability. Some are there to right past mistakes, and others there to steal the future.
Just have to clean up here, and then Ash will be the queen.
It's kinda hard to believe.
At no point did I ever really feel like any of these characters were there to fill space, with each role felt like a genuine citizen of Ivalice.
I think if you were to draw comparisons with other Final Fantasy titles that attempt this kind of stuff, the use of archaic grammar in this game isn't clunky, so people don't feel like they're speaking in ways in which no one ever would actually speak. The characters don't really avoid getting to their points with just needless text to fill space. The dialogue feels legitimate, it feels natural, it feels like something they would say. It doesn't feel like they're trying to make every sentence as fantasy as possible with all the characters. The only characters that really had moments that I had trouble keeping up with when I first played this game were the judges, because they speak figuratively quite a bit, but it's very appropriate.
You could tell the difference in upbringing and lifestyle by the way Balthier and Vaughn speak, despite the similarity between the two being sky pirates, although Vaughn has quite a ways before actually becoming one. This helps to illustrate the difference between character identities. With Balthier often speaking boldly, self-assured, and able to take perspective, while Vaughn, who grew up an orphan, speaks in a vernacular that's far more informal, with his character being obliviously impolite.
True, true. You're a princess and we didn't even recognize you.
I noticed.
Narratively, how diverse the cast is and how extensive the story is, any given character doesn't actually have that many lines. Everything is said with the intent of driving the plot or demonstrating the cast growth during the journey. I think one of my favorite story elements during this game is that despite Arcadia having conquered Dalmasca and Nebradia, the threat of Rosaria is very real to them and more immediate than the threat of Ash declaring herself alive and returning to Dalmasca's throne. There are moments where they openly fear what could happen if Rosaria were to invade at that time, and much of their decisions toward Dalmasca have no mind for the kingdom, but for the advantage it places them towards Rosaria, or how it could be used in the internal political system to rein in power such from Vayne Solidor. Without seeing a direct military force to suggest its power as an empire, you're shown a massive abandoned oil rig in the Sandsea, one of, if not the largest structure in the game, completely left to ruin. The fact that this massive construction operated in such hostile conditions in the Yards hints at their capabilities of fending off large forces of violent natives and working in environments of extreme climate and conditions far from their own nation.
This informs the player of the immediate need for territorial security for Arcadia.
Ivalice as a world feels massive, the impressive architecture and diverse cities managing to outclass even some modern titles. I think one of the most impressive achievements in this is how often the game conceals you in small corridors.
The massive cities feel organic, with stores being spread out in different locations rather than under one roof. An interesting way they pass on history and culture of some of the areas you visit is, this game they don't use markers above heads to show where side quests are, so you have to go up to every character and just talk to them. A lot of characters will just talk about useless crap, but many of them will give you legitimate history. It's a very interesting design choice, and I think it works very well.
Every location to me is memorable because the characters there make it feel like a real place I've visited. As an example, Bajurba being the host to rich magicite mines and airship docking ports, it's a city which attempts to maintain political neutrality and has employed tourist guides, as it's welcoming to visitors far throughout Ivalice. These tourist guides of Bajurba teach you the terms you frequently hear from citizens. While you're really only given a small sample of words, it's enough to make you feel like the city has cultural influence from some of the many countries that make trade with them.
So if you weren't aware, there's a bunch of inconsistencies in how my voice sounds. This video was recorded at different times during a chest infection. Apparently though, I can just absolutely gush about things I love about this game for close to an hour, so I had to cut a lot of stuff out of this video. I think I'd like to focus specifically on some other things instead of getting carried away and then talking about a bunch of random crap, but yeah, I don't know. Hopefully someone likes this video. I hope if you're watching this, you liked it. One thing I like to ask people when I was streaming was what their top 10 list of Final Fantasy games is, because everyone apparently has a completely different list, so it's just very interesting to me. Yeah, maybe I'll make another one. Thank you.